It was a hot morning in the African savanna. The sun was rising slowly, painting the sky orange and gold. James, a young and skilled ranger, was already on duty, observing the land carefully. His jeep moved slowly along a dusty path between dry bushes and fresh animal tracks. Suddenly, a heartbreaking trumpet tore through the silence. James hit the brakes. That wasn't a normal sound, it was a cry for help. His heart raced. He had to find the source of that desperate call as quickly as possible. James immediately left the jeep and began running toward the sound, which grew louder and more filled with pain. After a few minutes, he reached the edge of a deep, steep ravine. Looking down, he saw a young elephant stuck between rocks, unable to move. The poor animal had probably fallen during the night and now lay injured, exhausted, and visibly terrified. James knelt at the edge and tried speaking to it in a calm voice. He had to do something, and fast. Without wasting time, James grabbed his radio and contacted the base. "This is James. I found an elephant fallen into a ravine. I need a mobile crane and immediate support on the other end." They confirmed a team was on the way. In the meantime, James looked for a safer spot to get closer to the animal. He cautiously descended the slope, making sure not to slip. When he was close enough, he sat a few meters away and began talking to the elephant. The elephant, despite its pain, seemed to notice James's friendly presence. It stopped struggling and looked at him with eyes full of fear, but also curiosity. James spoke to it like one would to a frightened baby, telling it everything would be over soon. After about an hour, reinforcements arrived with the crane and harnesses. The operation was delicate. They had to lift the massive body without causing further injury. With extreme care, the rescuers fastened the straps beneath the elephant's belly. Every step was executed precisely, while James continued to speak gently to the animal. When the crane began to slowly lift the injured body, everyone held their breath. The massive pachyderm was finally brought back to the surface, laid on a blanket on the grass. James knelt beside it and offered fresh water from a container. The elephant drank eagerly, staring at him with a gaze full of gratitude. The veterinarians arrived shortly after to assess the animal's condition. The elephant had some scrapes, a dislocated leg, and signs of severe dehydration. James helped move him under the shade of a large tree, where he was given water and a rehydrating solution through and for. Despite the pain, the elephant seemed to relax. Every now and then, it reached out its trunk toward James, who gently petted its head. A silent and deep bond seemed to form between them, born from trust and compassion. Several hours passed. The sun was high in the sky when James decided to stay with the elephant for the entire day. His colleagues offered to take over so he could return to base, but he refused. He couldn't leave him. While the team set up a small temporary camp, James continued caring for his new friend, monitoring the fur and wetting his skin to prevent further dehydration. The elephant closed its eyes for the first time and peacefully fell asleep, knowing it was safe beside someone who cared. The next day, the elephant showed signs of improvement. He could slightly move his leg and had started eating fresh leaves again. The veterinarian said that, with proper time and care, he would fully recover. James smiled, seeing him react so well. "You're a warrior," he whispered. In the afternoon, as James briefly stepped away to gather supplies, something unexpected happened. A deep roar echoed through the savannah. A pride of lions was approaching the camp. The pride of lions moved silently through the tall grass. They were hungry, and the scent of blood and flesh had led them there. The rangers shouted to scare them off, but the lions didn't stop. Suddenly, James found himself face to face with the group. He had no weapons, just the walking stick he carried. The lions approached, their eyes locked on him. It seemed like the end. Then, a powerful sound ripped through the air. It was the elephant who had stood up, staggering but determined. With a mighty trumpet, the elephant charged toward the lions. Despite his injured leg, his fury was overwhelming. The lions, caught off guard, scattered across the savannah, frightened by the enormous pachyderm's reaction. James stood still in disbelief. The elephant positioned himself between James and the threat like a true guardian. After a few seconds, he turned to James and touched his shoulder with his trunk, as if to say, "Now you are safe." It was a meaningful gesture. The rangers witnessing the scene were speechless. It was rare, almost unheard of, to see an elephant act that way to protect a human being. But this elephant saw James not just as a rescuer, but as a friend. The following days were dedicated to the animal's full recovery. Every morning, James was the first to get up and reach him, bringing fresh fruit and gently petting him with gestures full of affection. One morning, while James was sitting beside the elephant under a baobab tree, one of the veterinarians approached him with a smile. "He's healing well," he said. "Soon he'll be able to return to the wild." That sentence, which should have brought joy, hit James like a punch to the stomach. He knew that day would come, but he wasn't ready to say goodbye. He looked into the animal's deep eyes, which seemed to understand everything. In the days that followed, James fully dedicated himself to the elephant's gentle rehabilitation, helping him strengthen his leg and get used to life in the wild again. He followed him from a distance as he tried walking longer, spoke to him softly, and laughed every time the animal sprayed water from his trunk. They shared moments of peace and play, almost forgetting that soon their paths would part. But deep down, they both knew. Freedom was near, and with it, a new beginning. The day of release arrived. The sky was clear and the air filled with emotion. The rangers slowly opened the gate that separated the camp from the vast savannah. The elephant stood still for a moment, then turned his head toward James. Their eyes met one last time. In that silence full of meaning, it seemed they said goodbye without needing words. Then, with a slow and steady step, the elephant walked toward freedom. James stood watching the horizon for a long time. Every so often, the elephant would stop and look back at him, as if to make sure he was still there. Then, at last, he disappeared among the trees and hills. Walking back to base, James felt a mix of sadness and pride. He had lost a companion, but gained an unforgettable experience. In the following days, every time the wind blew through the trees, James imagined he could still hear his friend's trumpet. Weeks passed. James kept working in the park, but every day, as soon as he had a free moment, he would walk to the hill where he had last seen the elephant disappear. Deep down, he hoped to see him again, even if just for a moment. His colleagues jokingly teased him, saying he had found a new best friend, but James wasn't offended. He knew deep inside that the bond was real, born from an act of courage and a gratitude that went beyond words. One hot afternoon, while James was fixing a fence, he heard a familiar sound behind him. He turned quickly. In the distance, through the dust lifted by the wind, he saw a towering figure slowly approaching. It was him, the elephant. James's heart leapt into his throat. The animal stopped a few meters away, raised his trunk, and lowered it slowly in what seemed like a greeting. No barriers, no cages, just two living beings who recognized and respected each other. James approached slowly, his heart pounding. The elephant didn't move, but stood still, trusting. When he was close enough, James placed a hand on the animal's wrinkled forehead, and the elephant closed his eyes for a moment. It was a timeless, silent moment full of emotion. No one spoke, but everything was said. The rangers watching from afar couldn't hold back their tears. In front of them, nature was writing a rare and beautiful story. The elephant stayed with James for hours. No words or grand gestures were needed. Their mere presence beside one another was enough. At the end of the afternoon, the animal turned and, without haste, walked back into the savannah. James watched him go, but this time he didn't feel sad. He knew the elephant was well, free and happy. And he also knew that, every now and then, he would return. Because the heart remembers. From that day on, whenever James felt the ground tremble and heard a distant trumpet echo through the trees, he smiled. It was the signal. His friend was near. And so, in a remote corner of the African savannah, a story was born, one without words but full of meaning. A story that spoke of courage, trust, and invisible bonds that unite different worlds. James never stopped telling it, and everyone who heard it was changed. Because some stories don't end.